Maya was hungry. It had been a long day, and all she wanted was a simple burger. She saw a small diner on the corner, the kind with neon signs and old booths. It looked normal enough. She walked in with a smile, her heels clicking on the floor. People turned to look at her. Some stared. Some whispered. She didn't understand why at first. She stood at the counter, waiting. The man behind it didn't say hello. He looked her up and down like she was trash. Then he leaned forward, eyes cold, and said the words that hit her like a slap. "We don't serve your kind here." Maya froze. For a second, she thought she heard wrong. But she hadn't. She looked around. No one said anything. One woman even smirked. Maya's hands shook, but she stayed calm. She looked at the man, then pulled out her platinum card. She placed it gently on the counter and smiled. "You sure?" she asked. He didn't blink. He just walked away. Maya picked up her card, turned around, and walked out. Her heart was pounding, but her face stayed cool. She got in her car and drove off. On the outside, she looked fine. But inside, she was burning. She wasn't just angry. She was hurt. She had worked hard for everything she had. She owned 2 companies. She gave to charity. She mentored young girls. But to them, none of that mattered. They only saw her skin, her clothes, her power, and hated it. She told her best friend what happened. Her friend said to forget it. "They're not worth it," she said. But Maya couldn't let it go. She posted the story online. It spread fast. Thousands of people commented. Some were angry for her. Others defended the diner. A news station reached out. Then another. But the diner didn't say sorry. In fact, they made it worse. They told the news that Maya was rude, that she was trying to start trouble. They said she wasn't telling the whole story. Maya saw the clip on TV. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just sat still and watched. When it ended, she turned off the screen and picked up her phone. She wasn't going to beg for respect. She was going to take control. They thought they could shame her, but they didn't know who she was. She wasn't just some woman who wanted a burger. She was someone who never forgot. She made a plan. She would hit them where it hurt, not with words, but with action. They wouldn't see it coming. And when it was done, they would never forget her face. She sat in her apartment, staring at the wall. The words from the restaurant stayed in her mind like they were carved there. Morning light came, but it didn't feel like a new day. It felt like something had been taken from her. Quietly, she picked up the phone and called someone close. After hearing the full story, the voice on the other end said, "Just let it go. You have too much going for you. It's not worth it." There was silence. The advice was kind, but it didn't settle right. Letting it go sounded easy, but it didn't feel right. The look on their faces, the way they made her feel small, wasn't something that could be forgotten. Later, she opened her laptop and typed. No anger. No loud words. Just what happened, step by step. She pressed post and left it. She didn't expect much. But within hours, it started to spread. Her phone buzzed over and over. People were reacting. There were comments from strangers. Some were shocked. Some were furious. Others said it had happened to them too. They shared, reposted, and showed support. Messages poured in. It was no longer just a story. It was now something bigger. Then reporters reached out. News channels wanted to speak with her. She didn't respond. She wasn't looking for attention. She just wanted people to know what really happened. Soon after, the restaurant made their own post. They said the story was false, claimed she had come in with an attitude, said she acted rude and disrespectful. That's why they turned her away. They used words like entitled and aggressive. They didn't mention what was really said. They didn't admit anything. She read their statement slowly, line by line. It was clear what they were trying to do. They wanted people to believe she had caused the scene, that she had been the problem, that they were just doing what they had to do. The truth was being covered up. And not just that, her image was being twisted. They had taken her story and turned it upside down. They thought she would stay quiet, that she would go away. She closed the screen and sat very still. Her mind was clear. She didn't want revenge in the way most people did. She didn't want to yell or demand. She wanted something solid, something lasting. She wanted to take the power back, not just for herself, but for what it meant. She reached for a notebook, wrote down names, looked up companies, numbers, business records. Step by step, she started to gather what she needed. The same voice called again, asking if she was all right. Her reply was steady. I'm fine. Because now, she wasn't unsure anymore. She was certain. She sat down at her desk with her laptop open and a quiet mind. No more noise, no more talking. It was time to work. She started by typing the name of the restaurant into a search engine. She didn't click on news stories or comments. She went deeper. Property records, business filings, names behind the place, the little things most people never check. She found the company name that owned the restaurant. It wasn't listed under the restaurant's name. It was a small business, registered a few years ago. She looked into that too. She found 2 names on the papers, 2 men with the same last name. They were brothers. She kept digging. One of them had a LinkedIn profile. The other had no social media at all. That one seemed quieter, harder to find. But a few more clicks told her what she needed. There were old news clippings, mentions of a gambling problem, a poker game gone bad, some debt. She didn't smile. She just kept going. Next, she searched for property information. The restaurant didn't own the building. It was leased. She found the name of the landlord. She made a few calls, asked simple questions, gave no details about herself. Just gathering information piece by piece. The restaurant wasn't doing well. Reviews had dropped. People were talking. Some avoided the place now. A few employees had even left. The business was under stress, but trying to look normal. She made a list of everything she learned. Ownership, lease terms, debt history, business loans, late payments. She wanted the full picture. She wanted to know not just the people, but the cracks in the foundation. Then she made another call. This time, to someone who knew how to make moves in silence. A business lawyer. Not just any lawyer. One who helped buy businesses without names getting involved. The kind who asked no questions, just followed the law and protected the client. They met in a quiet office. She laid out everything she had. He looked through the papers and nodded. It wasn't just possible, it was already halfway done. The brothers were in a weak spot. The business could be touched, bought, turned around without them even seeing it coming. She gave the lawyer the green light. He would reach out through a shell company, one that had no ties to her. No one would suspect anything. Not yet. The plan was slow, careful, smart. She didn't need to rush. Every move had to be exact. This wasn't loud. This was quiet work, like a chess match, one piece at a time. The weaker brother was the key. He needed money. Fast. His habits had caught up to him. The moment the offer came in, he responded. He didn't ask too many questions. He just wanted out of trouble. The lawyer kept her updated, step by step. No names were used. No trails were left. Everything was legal. Everything was clean. She didn't tell anyone what she was doing. Not the person who told her to let it go. Not the people who cheered her on online. This wasn't for show. This was about control. The kind that doesn't come from yelling or posting. The kind that comes when no one sees you coming. And by the time they did, it would be too late. A quiet message was sent to one of the brothers. No name. No big promises. Just a simple offer from a small company that looked normal on paper. The message said someone was interested in helping with the restaurant's debt. It would be fast, clean, paid in full. No trouble, no long talks. Just a number and a deadline. He read it more than once. Then he called the number. His voice was nervous but curious. He didn't ask many questions. He needed money, and he needed it fast. Trouble had been building for a long time. The numbers were bad. The bills kept coming. He didn't tell his brother. He thought he could fix it himself, quietly. The deal moved fast. A meeting was set in a small office. No logos, no big signs. Just papers, a lawyer, and a signature line. He signed without reading every word. He was too focused on getting the cash. He didn't care who was helping. All he saw was a way out. And just like that, the papers were signed, stamped, and sealed. She watched it all from behind the scenes. The plan had worked. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She just checked the numbers. 51%. That was all she needed. It was enough to make decisions. Enough to walk through the front door and not ask anyone's permission. The next morning was bright and quiet. She got dressed with care. No noise. No rush. Her steps were calm as she walked up to the restaurant. She pushed the door open and stepped inside like any other customer. People looked, then looked away. No one knew who she was. Not yet. The staff was busy. The brothers were near the back. One of them was on the phone. The other was checking a list. She walked to the counter and waited. When one of them finally noticed her, he walked over slowly. "Can I help you?" She didn't say anything at first. She opened her bag and pulled out the papers. Thick. Official. She placed them on the counter and tapped the top page once. His eyes dropped to the paper. He read the name of the company, then the ownership line. His face changed. The other brother saw the look and came over. He looked at the papers too. Then he looked at her. He blinked, confused. Something was familiar. Then she spoke. It was just a few words. Calm. Clear. Her voice was strong but not loud. That's when they knew. His eyes widened. The paper shook in his hand. People nearby paused, sensing something had changed. But she didn't explain. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She had the papers. She had the proof. She had the power. No need to remind them what they had done. They remembered. And now, everything was different. The moment she spoke, both men froze. They looked at her, then at each other, and then back again. Their faces changed. They remembered. One took a small step back, as if trying to make sense of what was happening. The other blinked fast, his hand still resting on the papers. Around the restaurant, everything went still. People turned their heads. The sound of clinking dishes stopped. One of the kitchen staff peeked out. A few workers stood frozen near the back wall. A waitress standing near the coffee machine leaned over to another and whispered, "Holy sh**t." The energy in the room had shifted. Everyone could feel it. She looked around the place. She noticed the faces, the tables, the wall colors, the same pictures hanging in the same places. Nothing had changed from the day they told her to leave. But today wasn't like that day. Today, she was here on different terms. She looked at the staff, then at the two men still trying to process what was happening. Nothing changes, she said. Not yet. The staff kept watching, waiting to hear more. Same hours, same team, same food. Everything continues. Some looked confused. Others looked relieved. But one thing does change, she added, turning toward the front. The sign. No one said a word. She didn't say what would go up in its place. She walked through the front door and stood outside. Above the restaurant entrance, the old sign still hung. The name that had once pushed her out. The name they thought would stay there forever. She walked to a nearby car and opened the trunk. She pulled out a crowbar, closed the trunk, and walked straight to the sign. A small group of people had stopped to watch. Some from inside were now standing near the window, peeking through the glass. She raised the bar and pulled at the corner of the sign. A loud crack echoed as the edge snapped. She didn't pause. She kept going. Piece by piece, it came down. The first board hit the sidewalk, then the next. Letters broke apart. Screws rolled across the ground. Some dust and splinters dropped onto her shoes, but she didn't stop. People passing by slowed down to watch. A few phones came out. A couple of claps broke the silence. The old name, the one that carried the weight of everything that happened, was gone within minutes. The wall above the restaurant was empty now. The space where the letters had been was just bare paint and old holes. She looked up once more, then turned and walked back inside. Everyone moved aside. Not one question was asked. No one needed to know what would replace the sign. Whatever it was, it would not carry the past. After the sign came down, the place felt different. People were quiet, unsure, watching every step she took. She didn't speak much, but her presence was enough. No one stopped her as she walked through the restaurant. She wasn't looking for attention. She was looking for answers. She started by checking the papers. The files were in the office near the kitchen. The drawers were messy. Receipts were stuffed into folders, some not even labeled. She sat down and went through them one by one. Bills, supply costs, wages, contracts. Most of it looked rushed and careless. The more she read, the more she saw a pattern. The money didn't add up. The numbers were off. Some of the workers were being paid less than promised. Tips weren't recorded properly. Hours were missing. She found pay stubs that showed regular staff working full weeks, but being paid like part-timers. She looked deeper. The kitchen was small and hot. The machines worked, but barely. The floor near the fryer was sticky and cracked. The freezer door didn't shut all the way. One shelf was broken, and knives were placed wherever they could fit. There were no proper safety signs, no list of rules, nothing on the walls to protect anyone working back there. She spoke to a few of the workers. Quiet talks, out of sight from others. Some were nervous at first. Then they opened up. One said she hadn't gotten overtime in months. Another said he burned his hand last week, and no one cared. Someone else said he had tried to leave months ago, but one of the owners told him if he quit, he'd never work in another kitchen again. They were scared. Not of her, but of losing everything. Some had families. Some were sending money back home. A few had no papers. They stayed because they had no choice. She took notes. Names, dates, payments, problems. Everything. One worker said he'd been asking for a new uniform for a year. Another said they used their own money to buy cleaning supplies. Some were not even sure what they were being paid anymore. She listened. She didn't make promises that day. She didn't try to fix it all in 1 hour. But she heard every word. And she wrote it down. She checked the cameras. Some were broken, but a few still worked. She watched old footage from the last few weeks. In one clip, one of the owners yelled at a cook over a small mistake. In another, a worker slipped and hit the floor, and no one helped. By the end of the day, she had a full notebook. Everything she needed. This wasn't just a bad business. It was a place built on fear, silence, and pressure. What started as a plan to take back power had now become something more. It wasn't just about what happened to her anymore. It was about what had been happening to everyone behind the scenes. She closed the office door. The staff watched her go. Some hopeful, some unsure. But change was coming, and she wasn't going to stop now. Keishi walked into the restaurant early one morning and placed a note on the wall near the kitchen. It said there would be staff meetings that day. Everyone was asked to come, one at a time. No one knew what it was about, but they showed up. She sat in the back office, same chair, same desk. The first worker came in looking nervous. She smiled, asked how things were going, and listened. That's all she did, listen. The stories came out slowly. Some spoke about missing pay. Others talked about being yelled at in front of customers. A few said they were scared to speak up before. One worker said she had cried in the bathroom many times but stayed because she needed the job. One man talked about working double shifts with no break. Another said he was told to lie to customers about ingredients. A woman said she was asked to clean things that weren't part of her job, and when she refused, she was threatened with fewer shifts. Some workers cried. Some said thank you. A few just nodded and walked out quietly. She took notes after each one left. A full page for each person. She didn't speak much. She didn't judge. She just wrote and listened. The day moved on. One worker after another came through the door. The room was quiet, but full of truth. By the end of the day, she had heard enough to understand how deep the damage ran. Not just mistakes, real harm. She saved the final meeting for last. The two men came in together. They looked relaxed. One laughed and said, "So, what's this about?" The other leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, waiting. She didn't answer right away. She reached into her drawer and pulled out a file. She opened it and placed the papers in front of them. At the top were printed HR complaints. Dated, signed, ignored. They looked down, confused, then annoyed. Next, she slid forward copies of invoices, ones they had faked. Numbers that didn't match the actual cost. They had charged the business for things that were never bought, repairs that were never done. Money went missing, and now it was all there in black and white. Still, they didn't say much. Until she pressed play on a small screen. A clip from one of the working kitchen cameras. It showed the two of them alone, talking and laughing. Their words were clear. They were mocking her, word for word, insult for insult. Names, slurs, jokes. The room went silent. They stopped laughing. One sat up. The other looked at the door. She didn't say anything. She just reached into her folder again and pulled out 2 letters. She placed them on the desk. Their names were at the top. They were no longer part of the business. They stood, angry now, trying to argue. But 2 guards stepped into the office before a single word left their mouth. The guards didn't touch them. They didn't need to. The 2 men looked around, saw the truth on the papers, heard the proof on the video, and knew it was over. They left the room slowly. The door closed behind them. She sat alone in the office, hands resting on the desk. It was done. Not loud. Not messy. Just right. The building still stood in the same place, with the same shape, the same windows, and the same door. But now it looked different. The walls were painted fresh. The old dark colors were gone, replaced with warm shades that felt open and welcoming. The lights were brighter. The windows were cleaned. The inside smelled like spices and something new. The chairs were no longer stiff or broken. New ones had soft cushions. The tables had been polished. A few plants were placed in corners, and the menu was updated and printed in bold letters. The kitchen had been cleaned top to bottom. Repairs were made. Safety signs were posted. Everything was in order. Clean. Clear. Ready. The staff was also different. Some of the workers had stayed. They were now smiling, standing tall. Others had joined recently. All of them looked proud to be there. Each person had a name tag, a fair schedule, and knew they were treated with care. Their pay was higher. Their hours were fair. Some had already told their friends that it was the best place they'd ever worked. The door had not opened yet, but outside, a small line had started to form. People took pictures of the new sign. It was large, clean, and bold. It read, "Maya's, where everyone gets a seat." The words were simple, but they meant something. People noticed. Word had spread. Not just from the post, but from the news, the workers, the small things said online. Some came because they knew the story. Some came because they were curious. Some just wanted good food. Cameras were ready. A few local influencers stood near the front, waiting to go live. Reporters stood by with quiet mics and steady hands. Inside, music played at a soft, perfect level. Not too loud. Not too soft. It made the room feel alive. The staff stood ready, lined up near the back. Everyone knew what to do. The energy was real. Excited. Strong. The clock hit the hour. The doors opened. People stepped inside one by one. The tables filled. Laughter started to rise. Orders were taken, drinks poured, food carried out. Plates filled with color. The menu offered simple things done well. Burgers, rice bowls, tacos, soups, each dish made with care. The cooks moved smoothly. The servers smiled. Everything worked. People were talking, posting, sharing. One guest said they hadn't felt this welcome in a long time. Another said the space felt like home. A group at one table clapped after their meal. A couple near the window toasted their glasses, smiling. Children laughed as they ate fries and shared bites of dessert. No one was rushed. No one was ignored. Everyone got a seat. Across the street, a car slowed down. Inside sat 2 men. They didn't park. They didn't speak. They looked through the window at the full restaurant, at the sign above the door, at the line still growing. They drove away. Inside, the night continued. A little girl ran up to the counter, holding her father's hand. The host leaned down and welcomed her warmly. She picked the table she liked best, near the wall with the painting. Behind the scenes, nothing was loud. Nothing was forced. Everything was working, and everyone was part of it. Later that night, as the crowd thinned, the last orders were served, and the music played on. A feeling stayed in the room. Not just success, not just revenge. Something deeper, something right. The restaurant had reopened. It was busy, full of life, and running well. Everything looked different now, both inside and out. But something still remained. Something that had been left hanging when the story first spread. Back then, the people who once controlled the place had gone to the media. They told their version, saying things that weren't true. They claimed she had caused trouble, twisted the facts, and acted out for attention. Their words were printed, shared, and repeated by others. Those lies stayed in public view. She didn't respond at the time. There was too much to fix, too many people depending on her to create something better. But now the work inside the walls was done, and it was time to deal with what was said beyond them. She met with a legal team. The case was simple. The false statements had harmed her, her image, her reputation. What they said wasn't just mean, it had broken laws. Papers were prepared, signed, and delivered. No press, no noise. Just a quiet message. They were being held responsible. The response came fast. The former owners didn't want a legal fight. They didn't want cameras or headlines tied to their names again. So they made an offer, a financial settlement to make it go away. She agreed to the deal, but the money didn't stay in her account. She sent every cent to a group that supports those who face unfair treatment. The organization helps with legal aid, school programs, and protection for those silenced by power or fear. Her choice was simple. Let the help go to someone who needs it more. A short time later, she was invited to speak at a small gathering. It wasn't a large crowd, just enough to fill a room. Some had followed her story, others were hearing it for the first time. Cameras were set up, lights turned on, and people waited. She stepped up, looked around, and shared only one line. When the door slams in your face, build a bigger one. The room responded with steady applause. Some stood, others stayed quiet, holding on to the meaning of those words. It wasn't a long talk, but it left something behind. No anger, no blame, just strength. Afterward, a few people came forward. They wanted to shake her hand, say thank you, or simply smile. She listened, nodded, and said little. There was nothing more to prove. Across the city, the building once known for turning her away now welcomed everyone. It had been transformed, not just in design, but in purpose. What started with rejection had ended in growth. Not revenge, not rage, just quiet, steady power, and a future built on something better. The evening was quiet. The last few tables were finishing their meals. Most of the staff had gone home. Only a few lights were still on. She sat near the back, a glass of wine in her hand. The room felt calm, steady. It had been months since the doors first opened again. Things had changed. People came not just for the food, but for the feeling, the welcome, the warmth, the fairness. She looked around. The chairs were still in place, the tables clean, the music low. Everything felt right. Not perfect, but peaceful. The front door opened. A man walked in, holding the hand of a small girl. She looked about 6 or 7, with shy eyes and small shoes that tapped gently on the floor. They paused at the entrance, unsure of where to go. She saw them and raised her hand, pointing gently toward the booth by the window. The girl looked up, a little unsure. The man leaned down and whispered something in her ear. She nodded slowly. She smiled and said, "Sit wherever you want." The girl's face lit up. She pulled her father's hand and hurried over to the booth. She climbed in, still looking around, her smile growing wider. The man sat across from her, looking relieved. It was a small moment, quiet and simple. She took another sip and watched them settle in. There was no need for loud words or big actions. Just space. Just kindness. Just the door staying open when someone needed it to. She didn't think about the past much anymore. Not the day they told her to leave. Not the lies they told after. Not the fight it took to change everything. That time had passed. But it was still part of her, a mark, not a scar. It had never been about the meal she didn't get. Not really. It was about what that moment stood for. Being turned away. Being seen as less. Being told, without words, that she didn't belong. Now, she belonged here more than anyone. She didn't need to win. She didn't need anyone to say she was right. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making sure no one else would feel the way she once did. The little girl laughed at something her dad said. They looked happy, comfortable. No fear in their eyes. No worry in their voices. That was enough. She smiled, not because she had taken back the space, but because she had filled it with something new. Not hate, not pride, just peace, not forgiveness, but something close,